All right, well, we made it. I just am gonna give a closing talk here, and I'll say this again, but thank you to all of you for hanging in there and for being with us for these last couple of days. I'm Toni Lyn Morelli. I am research ecologist with the U.S. Geological Survey at the Northeast Climate Adaptation Science Center and co-founder of the Northeast RISCC. Just to put in a little context of why it's important that we're here, Nancy, who you've seen over the last couple of days, recently sent this document because it just was recently released, the 2020 AFLA Climate Adaptation Survey. There's lots of good information in here. If you haven't taken a look yet, you'll want to. But this is, and for those who don't know, especially our colleagues from other countries, the AFLA is their Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, basically state agency organization. And it was a survey looking at state agencies and where they sort of prioritize their efforts, and all throughout it, there was a focus, clear priority on invasive species. But I'll just show you one figure that really makes that point. So respondents reported that their agency's high priority climate-related information needs, their highest priority is, and I highlighted this, invasive species movement and range expansion. And that, I guess, in a nutshell, is why we're here. Our mission as the Northeast Risk Management Network is to reduce the compounding effects of invasive species and climate change by synthesizing relevant science, communicating the needs of managers to researchers, and the other way around, building stronger scientist-manager and manager-manager communities, and conducting priority research. We have this new guiding principles document, and we have summarized the work we've done over the last year for the first time, and you can see that there's quite a few highlights that stand out, including just in our last workshop, I was mentioning that gardening with climate smart native plants that you can find on our website. It's been downloaded 1,800 times. As soon as we can all go out in the real world, we're hoping to print a bunch of copies and bring it to local garden centers. I hope you'll do the same. As Carrie led us through in our opening presentation long ago yesterday, we have come a long way in 5 years. And I think a lot of that progress shows, and the growth of our network shows in what we've been able to accomplish here in the last 2 days. And what we do, our focus of boundary spanning, original research, translation and synthesis, and communication and implementation, I think we're all kind of at the ready and hopefully shown off in a good light in the last 2 days. We asked you when you registered for this meeting what your objectives were, and we gave some suggestions. So the top listed here were our suggestions to you, and indeed, most people chose most of the top 5 here, or at least the top 4 were really like almost everyone wanted to attend this symposium to learn about the latest invasive species and climate change management techniques, as well as learning about the latest invasive species and climate change science. To hear about colleagues' success stories related to management of invasive species with climate change, to network with partners across geographies and agencies, and to learn best practices for proactive invasive species listing. A few people also listed a couple more that I thought you might find interesting, including learning the latest on outreach on invasive species and climate change, enhancing understanding invasives for training of the public, and discussing issues with use of herbicides in public opposition. Most people heard about this meeting through the listserv, but a whole lot of people also learned about it through NISRI, and then there's a lot of other options there. So those of you who didn't learn about it from the listserv, please do join our listserv. You can get there from riscnetwork.org. I'm sure one of my colleagues can drop that into the chat box. We do not oversend things, and I would say in what we've heard from colleagues and members of RISC, that everything we do send is valuable, and it's really only just probably 4 things a month, maybe 5 or 6. It was especially exciting. So that was sort of my summary of, I wanted to kind of walk through what we did the last couple of days. Carrie kicked us off with showing some of that information that I just shared with you again. We then got to share the news that we're expanding beyond the Northeast. So this has been really exciting for us to know that there's now a North Central RISC, Pacific Islands RISC, a Northwest RISC, and the concerns, information, needs, and science priorities are really similar across those regions. So there's so much that we can build from there and learn from each other. We then went into some of that climate science, and we heard from Matt Ayers about southern pine beetle, the latest science and management of that. And then I spoke about how we were taking some of that information about a species like the southern pine beetle that are range shifting species, these nuisance neonatives, and thinking about how can they be managed. And again, we have information on this at our website. In our first workshop, we talked about regulations, risk assessments, and thinking about making regulations, the possibility of regulations being more consistent across states, and working together on that. And so we had a great workshop there. We've consistently had just great participation in the last couple of days. It's been really fantastic, especially given that yesterday was inauguration day, so people were a bit distracted. We had really wonderful take homes. We've all assiduously taken notes, and they will be summarized and synthesized over the next month or a bit more, and we will get a report back to you. Our day capped off yesterday with a networking event that involved learning about capturing lionfish. So here's a little video of that, of vacuuming lionfish. And it is a reminder that these issues can really be shared across a very wide region. We can learn from each other. So it's great that we have Floridians and New Yorkers and people from the Pacific Northwest and from Canada and from Vermont and from all over coming together. And so we were able to bring those people together for conversation at that event yesterday, but also just in general. I've heard that in all the workshop breakout groups of kind of learning from each other, which is a really important primary objective for us at RISC. So we had this building proactive weed risk assessment workshop, and looking at building kind of climate change into risk assessments. So we had great presentations and conversations about that. So we can look to this wonderful group of people that then came together this morning around this idea of visioning steps to climate smart invasive species management. So bright and early this morning, breaking into groups and having conversations about thinking around sort of taking action. So what does it look like to do this work? And so we talked about it from the context of strategic planning. We talked about it from the context of preventative management, treatment and control, et cetera. And so we had really rich conversations around that topic. And then we went into my favorite session of these 2 days. I just thought it was fantastic, which was our successes and lessons learned in managing invasive species in a changing climate. I feel like I was giddy at moments. I think it was just so neat to have these speed talks, these short talks from managers focused on what is going well, what can you learn, when we all learn from each other about maybe what could have been done differently or is being done different now. So you can see Nina here speaking about Phragmites management, and then having a panel kind of conversation at the end, fielding questions. And this is not a pretty slide, but I just wanted to add it. So this is from the Q&A from that success stories session. And I just loved seeing these conversations. So someone says, well, what about, what does NOTWE do in terms of, I suspect that this is an issue. And Brian, as an expert on this, says, yeah, I totally think yes, you're right. You're obviously an expert on this too. And Adrian asks, do you have any success with this treatment of Phragmites? And Nina says, yeah, I did my thesis on that. It doesn't work. And then David gets asked about what's happening in Massachusetts, and a manager in Massachusetts says, this is happening in Minnesota. And David says, great, that's so interesting. And then finally, Angela asks about the Phragmites project at Sandy Neck. And Karen Lombard at TNC, which is off the, I ran out of space, says, yes, I have that information in a publication, email me. And this just feels like the exact, this is it. This is like the gold for me and for us, that we have people here having these conversations and sharing this on the ground knowledge that in some cases you see is published, in other cases isn't. And so it's just kind of a word of mouth sharing, which is so important. We then went into a wonderful session with excellent experts from around the world on treatment strategies and efficacy in a changing climate. And this is something that we know is of huge interest to our stakeholders and our community here, and something that we're working on getting more into. And it's frankly not an expertise of most of us in the risk leadership team. And so what we're doing is we're reaching out to others and trying to broaden our research umbrella. And so we want to bring in people that are studying this and bringing people that are doing this testing on the ground to be able to bring that expertise and knowledge to you. And so we had great talks from Judy, from Maur, all the way from Israel, and from Yansun. And so there was this wonderful sharing of information on this topic. And then finally, we closed out with our last workshop, which was exploring resilience in native habitats. And our goals were really to understand better, knowing that managing resilient, kind of conserving or managing resilience in native habitats is a priority for our community, that we've heard that in our surveys. We wanted to understand what that meant so we could do a better job of focusing on it. So this was really a brainstorming session that Bianca and Eve and Nancy put a lot of time into, because it was a challenge to kind of be thinking about how to talk about these things. That is this idea of resilience that everyone kind of has an idea of what it means, and yet it can mean a lot of things and be pretty amorphous. So a lot of people came together to have these conversations, and we did our breakout groups again and have tons of notes that we can go through, and we shared lots of information. And in the end, we came out with a better understanding of how the risk community is thinking about resilience, and what information is useful to managing for resilience. So if I come back to our objectives, I'm happy. I feel like we did learn about management techniques. We did learn about the latest science. We heard about colleagues' success stories. We networked with partners across geographies and agencies. And so I would say, from my perspective, check, 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 check. And so I just want to close off by saying that this is our fifth symposium, and I think I can say it's the one I did the least amount of work, which to me means that we are growing in all the best ways. I'm so impressed with all of the time that our leadership team put in on this. We have this wonderful group of people that meets weekly and just puts their heart and soul into this effort. And I think it shows in these symposia and the other products that we produce. And so just thanks to all of the great work from our team. And I'll end on some positive notes. We had these comments put in and the registration. And so I just thought it was fun to kind of have some upfront, some thank yous from you, the participants, and from this community that is so friendly and warm and wonderful to be a part of, that even though I don't study invasive species, I just keep coming back. And so thank you from all of us that put this meeting together, for showing up and for participating so entirely, especially at such a strange and hard time. And we will be following up with, questions, but anytime you want to tell us about how the meeting went, things that you particularly got out of it, or things that you feel like could go better for next time, we're open ears, because these meetings are for you. We really do this to share this information and meet these objectives of our network. So with that, I will just close out and say thank you from us, and go to our website to see all of this information served up, and to join our listserv if you haven't already. So you can go. I can't see anyone, but if you have any questions, the leads will likely be on for a few more minutes. So thank you for all your time.